Well, it's impossible to do justice to the Sicilian defence in just one game, but I'm going to show you a very interesting game now, which does highlight some of the remarkable possibilities available to black in this marvellous opening. And it's a game between international master Bill Hartson from England, and he's playing white against international grandmaster Heikki Westerinen from Finland. And this was played in the Havana Olympiad 1966. An old game, but an excellent game. And the opening is the Sicilian Dragon, one of the most famous of all Sicilian lines. Okay, knight f3, knight c6, and now white plays pawn up to d4. There are various anti-Sicilian lines, but by and large the only real way to challenge a Sicilian is by opening up the game straight away. That is why you see the move d4 commonly played against virtually all Sicilian variations. Well, black takes on d4, and it's this possibility of demolishing white's pawn jower in the centre that is one of the main attractions of the Sicilian defence for many players in the first place. Okay, knight takes d4, and now black's got loads of choice. Black can play knight f6, the classical variation. He can play knight takes d4, e6. That's another possibility, the Taimanov variation. Or he may play, as Westerinen does, pawn to g6, leading to an opening known as the accelerated dragon. Now we quickly go into the dragon proper, but the main reason a lot of grandmasters don't employ this particular move order is because they're afraid of 5c4, which leads to a variation known as the Maroczy bind, where white hopes to cramp black's position from the word go. This is no place to go in for the ramifications of c4, but suffice it to say that black has ways to get counterplay, otherwise you wouldn't see so many strong players going in for black's position after g6. It's all a question of style, and Hartson obviously fancied himself as an aggressive player who liked getting his pieces out quickly, so he goes back into a very sharp line known as the Yugoslav attack, perhaps white's most dangerous anti-dragon weapon. And Westerinen, for his own part, is happy to take up the challenge. Okay, so here we have the basic contours of the Yugoslav attack. Black's last move, bishop d7, is very modest, but the main idea behind that move is to prepare the development of the major pieces. And black's got to get it right. Over the next few moves he plans to bring his major pieces into the game, and if he doesn't get it right he's going to be absolutely wiped out, because, as I'll now describe, white has a very dangerous plan, attacking plan, at his disposal in this position. Well, white's basic idea in the Yugoslav attack is to strip out the defenders of black's king and then to checkmate on h7. It's as simple as that. As simple and as difficult as that, by the way. The bishop on e3, queen d2 battery is there for one reason. At some point white wants to play bishop out to h6 and then take on g7. That strips out one defender of black's king. He intends to follow up bishop h6, or even preface that move with h4, h5, opening up the h file, and then white will certainly take on g6 if allowed. Even already you can see that, you know, the white attack is beginning to build. If white manages to get his ideal position like this, the queen will surely follow the bishop out to h6 and give check. And so if you can imagine, at this point white's got a queen and a rook on the open h file. Well, all that needs to be done at this point is to take away the defender of h7, and so you often see white sending his knight into d5 as the final component of the scheme, taking on f6, and then it's checkmate on h7. Now that might seem very simplistic, and you know, black has many moves in the meantime, but you'd be amazed the number of games that went this way. Bobby Fischer just thought, you know, beating the dragon was down to an art. Sack, sack, mate. You know, and the game was over. He loved playing against the dragon. Well, it's not as simple as that, and but black must certainly be aware of white's idea in this position. All right, well, after queen d2, Westerinen kicked off his counterplay with queen to a5, a very popular move at that time, and white got straight on with the job by playing h4. Black brings his rook on f8 to c8, I think the main reason he brings that rook to c8 rather than the rook on a8 is that he wants to free up f8 for the king. The king might need to flee to f8 at some point. That's the main reason behind rook f to c8. And Hartston just gets on with it. This is exactly how you should play in opposite sides castling situation. I mean, I don't think white can do without castles long. He's getting on with his attack above all else. Black must buy this pawn, I think. And now white castles on the queen side. Black goes knight e5 and now bishop h6, a move which was very popular at that time. Now it might be worth just pausing at this point to see if you can forecast Black's next move. It wasn't bishop takes h6, nor was it knight c4 or rook takes c3. I'll give you a big clue before we go on. It's a very unusual move. Well, I wonder if you saw the remarkable move knight to d3 check, which, as interference moves go, is pretty special because it's not often that interference moves occur in a position where most of the pieces are on the board. It's an idea of Romanian Grandmaster Florin Gheorghiu, was very popular at that time and was thought to actually not refute White's idea with bishop h6, but certainly slow White's attack down. And it is a very remarkable move, I think you'll agree. Very difficult to see if you hadn't seen this position before. For instance, let's see if we can analyse a little bit. Okay, in the game, Hartston played queen takes d3. Now, if we just go back, if c takes d3, Black plays bishop takes d4. And I think Black is quite safe in this position due to the triple attack on c3. White has actually got to start thinking about Black's attack here. After knight d3, White may play king b1, but it's here that Black reveals the remarkable point of his last move, knight takes b2. And this is a pretty incredible move, you know, with two variations, I think. King takes b2, bishop takes h6, queen takes h6, and now either queen takes c3 check, or even, as was subsequently analysed, rook takes c3. In both cases with an excellent position for Black. And going back to the position after knight takes b2, if bishop takes g7 in this position, then knight takes d1. And White's got too many pieces on pre. In fact, White probably loses this position. So all this means that after knight d3 check, I wouldn't say White's hand's forced, but he's either got to know king b1 down to the last move, which Hartston probably didn't, or he's got to surrender any thought of mate with queen takes d3 and suffer the consequences of bishop takes h6 check. So knight d3 is a really excellent move. Okay, well the game continued. King to b1, and now a second remarkable move, rook takes c3. And it's this type of move, breaking up White's attack with the help of a creative exchange sacrifice, that attracts many players to the dragon. Now, if you just recall what I was saying about the mating attack, you'll quickly see that now White is in no position to mate Black anymore. Because firstly and foremostly, Black's retained the dragon bishop. This is potentially an incredibly strong piece. Black's got an extra pawn, 7 against 6. So he's got a bishop and a pawn for the exchange, you know, even if all else fails. And on top of everything else, let's say White takes with the queen, as Hartston does. After queen takes, pawn takes, Black has got other strings to his bow in this position, apart from the strong bishop and the extra pawn. You know, looking at the position, White's pawns are very vulnerable, aren't they? I mean, you can just see White's pawn on c3 dropping off the board at some point. And when that pawn goes, who knows, the other queenside pawns might go. Black's got a plan of pushing his A pawn up the board, and then maybe his B pawn, after which the bishop on b3 might be in trouble. So, all in all, you know, a very good compensation for a small material investment. And rook takes c3 quite takes away the thought of mate out of White's head. So, for that reason alone, it has to be recommended. Well, back to the game. Bishop g7 was played by Westerinen, Actually, just looking at this position now, I wonder whether bishop f4 might not be a strong move as well. Just taking all the dark squares. And this, for where I'm sitting, this looks like a strong move, because black can consider ideas like knight into g3, or he may even consider bishop back to e5 and then knight into f4. This does look also like a very strong regrouping plan. Back to the game. Bishop g7 was played, equally strong. And now white has to think about defence. He played rook h e1, a5 to force a concession on white's queen side, a4 to try and halt black's attack, and only now rook to c8. Well, I don't think white can allow this pawn to drop, so king b2 was played, and now the black knight sinks itself in on a beautiful square. Okay, g3, knight to e6, and I think that is the destination for the knight. Obviously white can take on e6 now, but if he takes with the bishop, his a pawn is very weak. If he takes with the knight, his c pawn is a goner. Well, I think straight away, why not? So knight e6, another very strong move, and white can't really take. Okay, rook e3 was played, trying to defend along the third rank. Knight c5, king a3, bishop h6, pawn f4, and then another very powerful move, pawn to e5. I talked a little earlier about the flexibility of black's pawns in the Sicilian, and nowhere is this better highlighted than here. In order to get attacking chances, white has to fling his pawns forward in the open Sicilian, and this implies all sorts of commitments for later in the game. And you often find that, you know, the longer the game goes on, the better black's position gets in the Sicilian. And here you can see, by delaying the advance of his e pawn, you know, black has got really strong attack against the pawn on f4. In fact, white is in real trouble here. So knight comes back to e2, only move. Bishop c6, eyeing both e4 and a4. Bishop d5, trying to neutralise the bishop. One tactic that might be missed is that after rook takes d6, black has the excellent retreating move, bishop f8, and the poor old white king is going to come under tremendous pressure. So Hartson doesn't want to get involved in that at all, hence he plays bishop d5. Okay, but of course that allows bishop takes a4, rook f3. White can really do nothing in this position. Another pawn drops off the board. Rook h1, trying to get counterplay at all cost. Bishop f8, f takes e5, bishop takes e4, bishop takes e4, knight takes e4, e takes d6, bishop takes d6 check, king a4. And now it's worth just summarising the results of black's exchange sacrifice quite some time ago. Well, okay, I think we can safely say that white is in a very unenviable position. Black's got bishop and 3 pawns now for the exchange. Rook c4 check is threatened directly. In fact, I think that's exactly what black played. And all in all, white probably has a lost position here. Okay, well, king came into b5. I suppose Hartson contemplated king 2 to b3, but not for very long, because after that black can just play b5, or he may immediately play a4, in either case with a winning position. So in a bad position you may as well take some risks, so Hartson decides to charge up the board and try and confuse matters. Okay, rook c5 check was played. King b6, bishop c7 check, king takes b7. I think this variation shows Hartson's sense of humour actually. Knight d6 check, king a8, and now a very comical move to finish the game. pawn up to a4, which makes room for the remarkable move rook a5, checkmate. And there's nothing white can do about that, I don't think. So a most unusual finish to the game. And a very good way of inspiring everyone to play the Sicilian defence. I like that game.